that resilience means enduring friction without breaking. But true power isn't found in constant resistance. At Black Mental Health Matters, we are redefining the narrative. There is immense strength in softness. There is courage in choosing to heal, in setting down the heavy lifting, and in claiming your peace as a non-negotiable right. We are building the infrastructure for impact. A collective space where the diaspora can find tools, community, and the unshakable permission to slow down, process, and thrive. Your healing is not a luxury, it is the foundation. Join the movement. Let's build a softer, stronger tomorrow together.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. My name is Itiyopiya Ewart. I am a clinical sex addiction therapist and coach. Today we are streaming live to United States of Africa on the Black Mental Health Matters YouTube channel and on LinkedIn Live. Today we will be discussing the motherhood no one prepared you for, healing the body, holding the grief, endometriosis, birth trauma, and pregnancy loss. And today I'm pleased to have with us Jessica Fisher Golden, Titilayo Ogunyale, DeShantis. Did I say that right? DeShantis Huff?
Yes, you did.
And Dr. Joan Samuels Dennis.
Good to be with you.
Here we are. So let's just start with a very brief, like introduction about yourself and why you're here. Dr. Joan, I'm going to start with you.
It's so good to be with you. I am so looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have about motherhood and all the elements that are there. As a mom, what I can say is I have 2 adopted children. So there was a process that I had to move through where I had to accept that natural birth was not going to be my path. And so I'm excited to see how that might add to the discussion that we're having. I'm the founder and the president of Becoming Institute. So my background is nursing. I have a PhD in nursing, philosophy, as well as mental health promotion. With the Becoming Institute, we teach nurses how to do psychotherapy. So we are in the process of transitioning the field, combining what we call neurotherapy with nursing and the science of psychotherapy. So I'm excited to be here to add in all the ways that I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joan. Jessica, let's hear a little from you.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Fisher Golden. I am the founder of Mama Matters. That's a private online community for new and aspiring mamas where we make life just a little bit easier, specifically the mamahood journey just a little bit easier. And we do that through community support, nutrition, and education. So I am here today to talk about all the wonderful things that I was not told when I embarked on this, what I call the mamahood journey. I'm excited to share.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Titilayo.
Hey, from DC. Thanks for letting me be here and share my story. CEO and founder of Liz Crown Innovation. I've come to you with a health tech background where I previously created and led a health tech accelerator for early stage startup founders of color in particular, because we know that's important. And also leveraging my communications background, which is also really important in the tech space, but also in the motherhood space as well. Also, I talk about my motherhood at Substack, so follow me over there. TC's Table is a lot of fun. I'm here because all the things happen during motherhood. I'm a mother of 3, and I checked so many boxes. I had gestational diabetes each time. I'm a NICU mom. We spent a whole lot of time there. That I was like, what happened? I had a perfect pregnancy the first time, and then the second time, all the things went wrong, including a cardiac arrest inside the NICU. And to being able to have another baby at the age of 40, it's a sunscreen, y'all. It's a sunscreen. Advanced maternal age. So I want to share some of the things that I learned about advocating for yourself and then going through a journey and the grief that comes with having a pregnancy that did not go anywhere near what you expected.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for sharing that. And last but not least, DeShantis.
Yeah, so my name is DeShantis Huff. I am a women's advocate and public policy leader. For me, this journey and this conversation is especially special and dear to my heart because, just like Titilayo, I experienced a lot of things that we don't talk about in our community. A lot of the things that I went through, as far as finally getting my endometriosis diagnosis after having my first child and going through all of the tests and having hyperemesis gravidum, just surviving those things and kind of becoming part of the stigma that we upon kind of look down on in our community. So it's a conversation that's needed, and I'm just blessed and glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so I said last but not least, but then I look up and Steph Jones is here. Steph, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. I'm so glad that I came in at the introductions. I hope I wasn't in too late. Blessings to everybody watching and the panel. My name is Steph Jones, also known as Lala Kalandra. I am a marriage and family therapist, mindfulness life coach. But the best M title I have now is mom. I am a new mom to a 7-month-old beautiful baby girl. I love her so much. So I'm here to share, from the clinical side, right? But also from the mom side. So I'm grateful to join this beautiful panel. Can't wait to jump into the conversation.
Thank you so much, Steph. And it's good to see
Mhm.
you. So
Yes.
let's just get it started off. When you hear the title, The Motherhood No One Prepared You For, what does it mean to you? And I'm just going to throw it back to DeShantis.
For me, I think it's reality. Reality is the first word that I think of when I hear that sentence because there were a lot of times where I daydreamed about going back to work or even working from home and being able to take care of my baby 24/7. But that was just not the reality for me. I had a very serious birth injury that changed like the trajectory of my life in like a very, very major way. And almost 5 years later, I'm still going through it, still going through the process, going through the therapies. And I think that a lot of women, um, we kind of understand that our life won't be the same when we have these kids, but I feel like the degree to which life can change when we have them and when we are going through the motherhood and things that we may not understand, the things that women around us may not understand. Um, it's just conversations that do need to be had surrounding that for sure.
Thank you. Steph, what do you have to add there? I can't hear you.
I think she's on mute.
Are you muted, Steph? Yeah, we can't hear you. So as we're figuring that out, I'm just going to throw it to Dr. Joan.
Sorry, what about now?
Oh, no, there you go. I was moving really quick.
Okay.
But
Sorry. I'm sorry.
let me
I
just
know.
repeat the.
I was pressing the unmute button. I don't know what was going
Uh-oh. It sounded like you went out again. Unable to hear you. Okay, so let's just, Steph, I'm gonna just hold that with you and then move on to Dr. Joan. When you hear the title, The Motherhood No One Prepared You For, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, my kids are now 20, 19, and 20. And so I can reflect back in terms of, what wasn't taught to me. And a lot of times I think about what do we need to teach the younger generation? So I'm going to kind of speak from that perspective because I think as we go into marriage or relationships, one of the things that's often emphasized is having children. but no one prepares you to not have children. No one opens the door for motherhood not to occur. And I think it's okay that we're not mothers, and that the path that some of us travel is not motherhood. But that is not something that is prepared in any way. It's not a conversation. The continuation of our genetics is prioritized over, there might be in your particular flow and trajectory that motherhood is not what is prescribed. But we then move around that in all the ways, and I am speaking about myself now, we move around that in all the ways that we can, so adoption becomes available. But then no one prepares you for what adoption looks like versus a natural birth, and how do you successfully maneuver that. But more important for me, there's a wisdom that I think needs to be taught to children at a very, very young age about why we're here. And that wisdom is not currently present in anything that we do. So a lot of us go through this life thinking, I'm born to find a job, move through a career, build a family, eventually die and move on. And then hopefully the next generation transitions. And of course, there's a whole bunch of things that are filtered into that. But we don't talk to very, very young children, even the ones coming out of the womb. We don't whisper into their ears about why they're here. And so I think part of what's fundamentally missing is then we get caught up in proving ourselves, in achieving certain things. But the ultimate challenge that each of us has to do is to grow and become something that's quite special. And I think that's the part for me that is not present in the teaching. So when I hear that initial title, that's kind of some of the things, a few of the things that come to mind, but there's so much more.
Thanks so much. And what I hear you saying, it's something around like fundamentally missing a sacredness to being here. That kind of came up for me. Jessica, what would you like to add?
I would, first of all, Dr. Joan, that was phenomenal. I love the fact that you highlighted on how we're not taught, it's not talked about how you are, what if the path doesn't work out for you? So I just wanted to just bring that to the forefront. Personally, I did not know a lot of things. And my assumption was, well, I have all these aunties and my mother, and I'm going to go into this situation knowing everything. And a couple of things happened for me. Firstly, I chose the home birth route. And that was nothing at all in any of my immediate, what I call sphere of influence. That was not their experience. So there was a lot for me to learn on that aspect. And then after the baby gets here, there's all of these unknowns. Like I heard a lot about, or at least there were a lot of sneers and side eyes about, oh, birth. You sure you want to do this? But never anything positive about it. So I'm going into the situation uneducated, specifically about home birth, but then secondly, with this negative feeling of this is going to hurt and it's terrible and all these changes are going to happen to my body, not knowing exactly what, but just like doom and gloom. So for me, it was the opposite. And I did not know that it was going to be what my personal experience was.
Thanks so much for sharing. TT?
The one story that I have is like when I had my first child, I was in the kitchen and my baby was crying. You probably hear this is my third baby, she's crying right now, but my first baby was crying. And I was just sitting in the kitchen starting to cry, like, what did I do with my life? Like, what is going on? Like, y'all gonna leave me here with this new baby by myself? I mean, it was with my husband and my sister and my mom, but like I had no idea what I had gotten into and how the gravity of motherhood. And everywhere else in my life, I was that box checker, academic, like I did this, I did that, I went to school, graduated 4 years, got this job, got that, got pregnant. And then when this baby got here, I was like, what in the world am I like? There was such a big responsibility. And it was a hard shift for me. I think there was a great tension of what my life was before and what my life was becoming. And the transition was really hard for me to hold both in one space and to fully come through. I think probably a whole 7 years later, when my daughter's 7, I think it really matured for me in that way. I'm not trying to say that there was someone in particular that should have prepared me, but I would say that, there's a lot of conversation about like, oh yeah, just, you're supposed to get married and have kids, without thinking about how big of a decision that is and how substantial that changes your life, your mind, your body, and the support that you need to go through. And then later, as I found out that a lot of things can go wrong during birth, just like a lot of things can go right, but just having that holding all those truths in one hand and being able to digest that was a challenge.
Thank you for that. It makes me think of like my experience of being taught a lot of the physical processes of what I could expect and not the emotional processes. And the emotional processes were the ones I was kind of like, whoa. So like really feeling what everyone has shared. And so I want to just talk a little bit about, or have y'all talk about, the stories that we have inherited. As Black women, what messages did you receive growing up about being strong, enduring pain, becoming a mother, and taking care of everyone else before taking care of yourself?
Although I didn't really recall having, oral stories about this. I just saw strong women in my family. My grandma had 16 kids. My mom she has 5 kids. And so I saw the work that they put in, and I could see that it was challenging. But even still, when I had my kid, I was like, y'all was doing all of this? Oh my God. Like, you should tell me this. I didn't know you was losing this much sleep and you had to make all these lunches and all this thing, because they made it look easy sometimes, through my child's eyes. Now as an adult, I could see what it really was. And I know there's a lot of discourse about like, you don't always have to be strong. And I don't see strong as being a negative thing. I think it's a positive thing. It's how a lot of Black women have gotten through. I think the negative part of it is when we sacrifice ourselves, and we don't take breaks and know that we can't be strong all the time. But, being strong as a feature is fine. But knowing that sometimes you might not be your day or your week or your month or your year. And we do need to pour into ourselves. And so that's something that I've learned and I've seen over time through other women and through my mom as well, taking some time for themselves. And I'm getting that now as I'm going through my journey.
Yeah, thank you. DeShantis?
For me, kind of like Titi said, there weren't a lot of oral conversations about things that would go on. But for my journey, what I went through personally, I saw a lot of the negative conversations around women that did not bounce back after pregnancy. Those women being called weak, and like our grandmothers being able to have 10 to 16 children, eating a piece of grapefruit, and next week they're back to, doing whatever it is. To now us, having to go into the hospitals, preparing for a natural birth or whatever birth journey you were preparing for to go left, and having to get the epidural and things of that. There were no conversations about things, going wrong or really going well in that area. So I kind of want to step away from that negativity with talking to the younger women in even in my generation, and some women that are older than me, having kids now. There do need to be conversations about these things. Not only stepping away from the negative aspect, but the positive as well. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that is a really important part, because that is the realness of it. It ain't all negative and it ain't all positive.
Yeah.
There are things that that you're mixing in with through the entire process, and beyond birth. We will get to that. Dr. Joan, what would you like to share?
I was taught very much like the other women here have talked about, through watching my mother and actually my grandmother, because I was born in Jamaica, actually immigrated to Canada when I was 10 years old. So moved through a process of watching my grandmother and her sisters and the ways in which they lived life. And it was always about just getting it done in order for the family to be okay, right? And that was literally their end point. In order for everybody to be okay, I just have to get it done. So my mother immigrated when I was 3, and she had to get it done, you know? So coming to Canada was going to open doors for her. So she was going to leave behind family support. She was going to leave behind her children. How much strength does it take to do that, right? Then when I arrive in Canada, I'm watching her work 3 jobs. She would get up at 5:30 in the morning. She'd finish one job at 3:30. She'd have an hour break. She'd start another job at 5, work till about 9 or 10, home by 11, to bed, same thing, repeat, repeat, repeat. What does that say? You know, no man to rely on, just herself. But gosh, as I watched her, something was already ingrained in me, because I'm one of those people, I do not sit in a storm. So, you know, some people, the storm is going on and they want to sit and they want to cry. And I'm like, let's go, you know? So we can't sit here. We can't stand here because the storm is pouring. If we keep moving, then we get to the end. But I realize that's just an ingrained, perhaps it's genetic, because my mother had it, my grandmother had it, my great grandmother likely had it. I now have it. So I have to think about the genetics as, is it just a coping mechanism that through the experiences of, you know, the generations before and the bigger context of Jamaica and all of the enslavement pieces, do I have a genetics that is pure, or do I have a genetics that is now a coping mechanism for what they had to endure? So I think about all of that. But I do know that I have a low tolerance for pain. So if you pinch me, I will scream. And so I no longer stand there and pretend that I am not in pain. I say, I am in pain. I need you to stop it, right? So if I'm going through a medical procedure, which a lot of Black women, obviously, you know, having children is now medicalized. It's now not seen as a natural part of what we do. It's seen as a medical intervention. So if I am now in the midst of a medical intervention and I am in pain, I will say, doctor, I need some pain control, right? But a lot of women don't know how to do that. And I had to learn how to do that. So I think a big part of the strength that is now working against us is that somehow we think we have to tolerate pain instead of saying, stop that. And by whatever intervention needs to be introduced so that it stops, then it's introduced. So I think that's the part for me that over the years, I've had to actually step into, that it's okay to be strong in certain situations, but then when you feel the pain, just notice. And then as you notice, tell somebody. And as you tell somebody, expect an intervention, and an intervention that works.
Very important. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Joan. And I didn't know you were Jamaican. I'm saying your name wrong. It's not Joan, it's Joan. Jessica, so Steph, thanks for, happy to see you're back. And we are talking about the stories that we've inherited around motherhood and being strong Black women. And Jessica, do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So very similarly, right? I grew up as a young girl watching all the women. I mentioned I have a lot of aunties. Maternal side, I have 13 aunts and uncles. Paternal side, 6. Being that my parents are the younger of their siblings, I just grew up in this large community of family. Beautiful thing. But what I remember witnessing was all the aunties did all the work. We had a lot of celebrations. We have a lot of, because there's so many people, right? There's always a birthday and all these things, and there's a lot of planning, and all this fell on the women. Now, the men who are very present, their roles were, you know, like we can fix things and hang things and make money and things of that nature, which was great. However, when I started this journey into what I call mamahood, I decided I was going to move to a city where I had no family. And this is why I blame all my aunties, because none of them said, hey, young girl, what are you doing? because I saw all the support, right? I saw like this is natural. So I come here thinking, I think TT, you mentioned that earlier about like I did all the things, right? I was a boss in many different areas of my life. So I'm like, this is nothing different. I'm gonna have a kid, naively. So now I have these little people and we don't have that dynamic. And being that I grew up in such a large family, like a lot of my friends are my cousins. They're my second cousins, right? So coming into a space where I don't have that physical community like nearby was very like eye-opening for me because I just assumed this is something easy to do, right? Like just getting I'm not very far from where a lot of my family lives, but we're 4 hours, like that's far enough. And when you're in the trenches, like a couple of us here, who have very young kids, like they're on your hip, right? Like it's a 4 hour drive is not a 4 hour drive when you have a little, you have a little baby who's relying on you, for breastfeeding and just support in general. So it was never spoken about the strength piece. It's just like it was inherent. My brother tells me this is a trauma response, right? Like I feel like I have to do all the things on my own and I can't ask for help. And if you do, not that it's said all the time, but it's the side eye, like, you taking a nap again? What did you do today? And because I do come from a Caribbean background, that was something like shunned upon a lot. Like, what is this rest thing? What is this? You don't get up from morning yet? Like, what are you doing? So learning or unlearning that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to send the kids off. It's okay to just say, hey, I'm not going to run you all over the place and go do all these things. We're going to sit here, we're going to read, and we're going to rest, because normalizing that is very important so that the next generation doesn't necessarily see it how I did, that you always have to be busied. You always have to be doing something, cleaning, So that's my experience of what strength was supposed to look like.
Thanks for sharing that. And what you shared reminded me of Dr. Joy DeGruy with her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, where it's that, that trauma response is also the conditioning that you don't get a break. You just don't even get a break. And just in how the system is set up with Black women being viewed as the folks who are like, for lack of a better phrase, the beast of burden for the culture. And so that narrative is very persistent, and each of you have tapped into a part of that. Steph, what would you like to share?
Check 1 2 1 2. Can everybody hear me? All right. Just one. A couple things. I just want to join the Caribbean Massive and say, yes, you get checked for liming around. You know what I mean? Hanging around, hanging about. And then also with the post-traumatic slave syndrome or disorder, it's like, it is so ingrained in us to feel guilty about taking a break or resting or even thinking about it, right? We might not even manifest it in the physical, but if you think about taking a break, someone's looking at you with a side eye like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And I always say I come to break not taking a break. You know what I mean? I come to break that. I come to be that person in my family, around my friends, everybody, to break that, because I, like everybody on this panel, I'm sure, especially as a Black woman anywhere across the spectrum of the diaspora, we have to do everything. We are the beast of burden, right? We are the pack mules, and add the religious space into it, wherever, if you're in a church, a synagogue, mosque, wherever, the women are doing everything. And so you learn that very easily. It's almost as if it's placed in our DNA. So as soon as you're birthed into the world, you just automatically know to just get in line and do that. And that's what I've seen. I've seen all the women doing that. I've seen them doing everything. And that's what strength looked like to me, that we take care of everything, right? And I always challenge traditional roles, because traditional isn't really traditional, but it's fine. But traditionally, the woman takes care of the home. That's what I've always seen. My grandmother, great grandmother, my mom worked. She was a lawyer. She was an etiquette coach. She was an educator and all that. She still took care of a lot of the home. She still did this. And my aunts, I'm looking at them. Everybody's just working and working and working and doing and doing and doing. And I'm not saying the men aren't doing anything. I'm just saying we were doing a lot. The women were doing a lot, and you're trained to do a lot. And you do see that as strength, but it's actually a burden. it's not. And if that is strength, that's not the measure of strength that I want anything to do with. Do you know what I mean? Like those are decisions that I make, right? Even trying to travel into the next conversations, like I'm happy that they had that strength. And I'm also happy that I don't have to carry on that type of strength, but I'm still strong. And I'm strong enough to say I need help. And I'm strong enough to say, wait a minute, I'm drowning here. I need someone to throw me a life raft. And I went to South Africa and had a baby. I didn't expect to move to a different country and have a baby. That wasn't on my. I know how babies are made. I know all that. I know, but I didn't plan to do that. So I'm like, hey, what's that? So I had to be strong and humble myself and say, I know I'm used to take care of everything, and everybody I've seen, every woman that I've seen takes care of it all. You don't complain, you just do it. You put the burden on your back and you move. I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to take a step and say, I actually need help. I need assistance. And if you're not going to do that, then you really can't be in my circle in that way. That's where I am now. If you're not giving me that assistance, I love you, I appreciate you, but I don't want to pretend that I can lean on you. You're showing me I'm strong. You can lean on me. And then I go to, and the leg snaps out. That's not what I need right now. So I'm, again, with the 7-month-old and just traversing what strength looks like and what it doesn't look like, and undoing some of the ways that I was taught strength that actually don't work for my life anymore. So that's it in a nutshell.
So much wisdom there. And when you were like, I'm here to break, I'm like, go ahead and break it then. Go ahead and break it then. You here to break. And every time I think about those things, it makes me think of Bob Marley singing, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. It's like, yo, I do not have to choose to continue this pattern. I don't have to choose to continue to sacrifice myself. I don't have to choose slavery and my body being worn down by stress and strain, being angry at people who don't deserve it because I'm up to here, right? And so let's just move on a little bit. Dr. Joan, you were talking about tolerating pain. Mm-hmm. And my next question is around the historical part. Historically, Black women have had to fight to have our pain believed. How do these historical realities continue to show up in today's healthcare experiences, particularly around endometriosis and birth?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I adopted both of my children, so didn't have to go through that experience of birthing and dealing with all of the other things that the other ladies here have had to manage. But what I can say is that I believe there is genetically, as you talked about PTSS, genetically, we are now in a state where we have to manage pain, and we're doing it based on a lot of genetic memory versus what's actually in front of us. When you go to a regular hospital today to deal with any issue, you're going to meet a different type of physician than existed 30 years ago, 100 years ago. You're going to meet a physician who's actually aware that Black people have been forced to endure pain, that they have been misunderstood. This is now taught to them. So we can't treat this situation that all of us has historically, learned about, that is the current reality. So if you go into any emergency room and now you're dealing with a physician, you can actually speak to them truthfully about what it is that you're experiencing. So the question is, do we permit ourselves to speak about what it is that we're experiencing, right? Because if you do, then you get the support and the help that you need. Now, you might run into some people that are still ignorant. I'm not saying that those people don't exist. But what I'm saying is when you do encounter them, you're going to have to immediately ask for somebody. So you're going to have to immediately go around them in order to be able to get the person who's going to manage you well. or let me say manage your health well. And we do have to put it that way, because we aren't the ones who are being managed. It's our health that's being managed, but we play the partnership role here. And I think because we've been so conditioned to experience physicians as not partners, but somebody who tells us what to do. That is also changing. So the new physicians that are graduating today know that they are supposed to be in partnership. And the ones that don't, again, you will always have the outliers. But it comes down to, I think, the responsibility that we have to own in order to make certain things then unfold in the way that we like. So what I say to folks is, as you prepare, always find out what is the standard here. Like any room that I go into, I'm asking the question, once I enter that room, what am I expecting? What's the standard? What do I need to know? What do those people in the room know? Then how do I manage this room effectively? And so what I want to say is, for anyone who is preparing for birthing, anyone who is preparing for the maternal journey, then begin to learn about what the medical standards are. We've got all sorts of AI now that is going to be able to support us in a way that we were never supported before. We can go into these rooms with a knowledge and an understanding, and a superior type of understanding than before. And I think this is where we're going to win today. It doesn't mean that the past hasn't occurred, but what I'm suggesting is that the physicians aren't living in the past, they're living in the present moment. And there's certain standards that they have to now accept as part of their practice. And this is where we can begin to capitalize on it.
Thank you. DeShantis?
I want to touch on the pain piece for sure and how it still shows up. A personal example for me was giving birth to my first child. I had to sit on that bed and get my what is it called? The epidural shot. And during that time, they hit my bone not once but twice. And just to fast forward a couple years, now I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, degenerative disc disease. And at that time, let's say a couple hours after having the cesarean, I was cold, I was in pain, I couldn't stand up straight. Still to this day, I don't understand how anyone is expected to go through a C-section and walk straight and not have any pain, to not have any pretty much side effects to going through something as traumatic as that is. I also have a NICU baby. He was in NICU for about 3 weeks. And when I gave birth, like I said, I was in pain and I wasn't quiet. I had a doula and she trained me how to advocate for myself. Until then, and I didn't know how to do it. I was kind of quiet and meek. So whenever I did speak up, I didn't think, anyone would care. But she told me, you put your foot down in these spaces. And I did attempt to do that, but they believed that I wasn't in pain, that, it would wear off, and that I just wanted to stay in the hospital with my baby. And even if that was the case, that's perfectly natural. Who wants to go home without their baby? So, unfortunately, historically for us, it still shows up, especially when we are in a predominantly Caucasian area. All of my doctors there, they were Caucasian, or they were, from Europe. So, being the only Black person in the room, I truly believe that I wasn't being advocated for. And that no one really cared that I was in pain, because here, 2 doors down, a white woman, was able to stay in her room, not going through anything similar that I was, having a NICU baby. So it's unfortunate that we still experience these things. And my work, and I know everyone on this panel here, we're going to continue to have these conversations to get away from this. I don't think anyone at this point should still be having these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. TT.
Oh, DeShantis, I'm sorry that happened to you, and you deserve better care. I had 2 C-sections, and it's very traumatic. It's very unnatural. And the rates of C-sections are going up, and you just start to wonder, are we being pushed into this, or Is it because it's
Definitely.
convenient for a doctor's schedule, or do we really need this? And that question kind of lingers with me. Um, uh, when we talk about advocating for pain and advocating around our bodies, I can definitely relate to that. I have very different experiences when I'm with doctors of color versus doctors that are, not of color. The rate of how they believe me and how they respond to me is different. Um, and I've personally experienced that. Additionally, I would say, even so, I landed in NICU because I was advocating for myself. As you can see, I'm not, I'm not that quiet. But I will say that sometimes as we go through life, women have been socialized a certain way to not be seen as aggressive or a troublemaker and this and that. And some of that did carry over with me, because I could have been like, no, I told you, like, I have this problem. I think something's wrong. And that's what happened with my second child. I was like, I think something's wrong. I think something's wrong. And I had an infection that went undetected that led to my water breaking at 23 weeks. 23 weeks. So we were in a NICU for 150 days and 3 years of therapy for my daughter to be okay. And I say that to say that even though I wasn't in physical pain, I think it's trusting your intuition, trusting your body, and not allowing yourself to say, I'm doing too much, or even if they don't believe me, keep pushing. My regret is I didn't change doctors, but thankfully I took myself to the hospital, and hadn't I taken myself to the hospital that day, I would have lost my child. I would have lost my child if I didn't put things into my own hands. And so you might not be in physical pain. You might have a concern, a complaint, and you have to let go of any type of burdens that you may have on yourself to say, like, I'm still going to check it out. Even if it's nothing, it's worth my health, it's worth my child's health. And I'd rather be wrong and annoying, if you have to think of it that way, than to have the incredible pain or misfortune of what could happen on the other side of that. Another point I want to say is, if you yourself are not in a place to speak up and advocate, grab somebody who's going to do that with you. Put them in the room with you. If that's your mom, your sister, your friend, have them, or your partner, have them in the room and have them support you. I had my husband in the room, and he was like, come back in here. She's not right. That person knows you're not right sometimes before you even know, because we're used to operating on, oh, we can do it all. I can do it all. But sometimes somebody can see your face and be like, no, you saying you're right, but you're not right. And so having that additional support with you has been great for me. And I would advocate for other women to have that for themselves too.
I think that's very important, TT, that bringing up that if you can't do it, have somebody there with you that can. And, my heart goes out to you with your situation as well. I'm just realizing, as folks are sharing their stories, there's a lot coming up for me. Because I think in our culture, there's this thing, and it might be global, but this idea that you can just go have a baby.
Can I add to that? When I had my NICU baby, people in my family, people around me was like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Or yeah, my water broke. Or yeah, my cervix opened up early. Or I had a stillbirth. I was like, y'all just telling me congratulations when I got pregnant, but didn't. I can see the tension of, like, not trying to scare me, but also I think it'd have been useful to kind of hear these stories, maybe before I got pregnant or around, to understand, like, what is in my family history. But none of that came out until I had went through this and people were trying to connect with me and help me through. And I think it's important that we find ways to share something that is difficult and traumatic. And that's part of me speaking up about this now, is part of my healing. And I think it's important for us to talk more and to elevate these type of conversations.
Absolutely. Jessica?
To that last point, I've had conversations with the women in my family, specifically during the pandemic time. We used to host these monthly calls, right? Just to connect the family, because a lot of us were international and some of us were in different states, right? And I said, I want to take a quick poll. Can anybody who has an issue with their thyroid raise your hand? And almost all the women on both sides of my family raised their hands. And I said, I'm going to take it a step further. What is a problem with your thyroid? And I'm smiling because I've heard this in conversations, right? Like, oh, this one, yeah, she have a problem with her thyroid. She have thyroid problem. I don't know what the hell that means. Excuse my language. I have no idea what that means. You have a problem with your thyroid. And I use that platform to ask, well, can everybody, if you're comfortable, go through and share is it hypothyroidism? Is it hyperthyroidism? What are some of the effects? So, TT, I appreciate you bringing that up because I thought it was astonishing that all these women of these big ages, older than me, have gone through this, but nobody talked about it. So now when I have conversations with my practitioner and they're asking about family history, I can only share what I know. So imagine me telling my practitioner, yeah, the women in my family have thyroid problems. What does that mean to a medical practitioner? I don't even know what that means. So it's very interesting to me that, and it goes on to what we talked about earlier about, right, this perceived like you're just supposed to be strong and we don't talk about certain things. I think collectively, we've all seen how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to take care of things. We're supposed to be the planners. We're supposed to be the ... right? All these different things, but there's not a lot of communication. There's not a lot of storytelling, whether that's out of fear of not scaring somebody or they don't need to know that. If I had $1 for every time somebody, yeah, that happened, but yeah, we don't have to talk about it. And it's like, wow, well, why not? So I love to push within my own family and also within my community, talk about the things that happen to you. It's okay. You're in a safe space. We can all learn from these things. It's very important so that generations on, even outside of our own specific families, we normalize these behaviors as well so that we can learn and know that it's not just us. We're not this isolated case where, even in this panel, there are conversations about some of the things that some of the women here have experienced. And it's not, you're not doing this in a silo. It's not just you, but how great would you feel to know, wow, DeShantis went through this too. And I felt like this when I went through it, or I also didn't have a voice in a lot of situations. I just felt like nobody's going to pay attention to me, or I'm taught to be the good girl and not stir up so much drama over how I'm feeling.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Jessica. It made me think of like that's something that connects us so deeply, and just tying that back to this the fundamental thing that's missing around the sacredness of all of this. Steph, what would you like to share?
Oh man, like I'm just in agreement with everything that's been said. But just adding that kind of mental health piece in around how much shame and guilt that women have been made to feel over having any complications with pregnancy or a NICU baby, or even a miscarriage, or having endometriosis, or having fibroid issues. There has been so much shame and guilt that have been placed on us. And so shame and guilt will shut your mouth very quickly, right? It will make you not share, it will make you not pass down. I mean, my goodness, Jessica, everybody in your family, or mostly everybody, was saying, oh, we have thyroid issues, right? What does that mean? But then, like, right, why didn't you tell me that when from a young girl? Why didn't you say, look out for this? You know what I mean? I feel like, and I've mentioned this before, I had a couple conversations with some friends, because we're talking about this stuff, as taboo as this might be, but it's almost like you're inducted into some vicious sorority where I'm watching you go through what I went through, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm watching you about to fall into the same pit and trip over the same hurdle and roadblock that I did, but I'm going to be silent about it because I don't want to say anything. And it's like, so many people are denouncing sororities. I denounce that sorority. I denounce that. I don't want membership into that, because if you see something, literally say something. And if something has been experienced that you've gone through and you've endured this, why would you want anyone else to go through that? And if you have the knowledge to help someone navigate something, why wouldn't you say that? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. What would make me be quiet? What would make me not want to help my family member, my friend, someone that has been going through it? And usually at the baseline of that is shame. I feel ashamed. I've been made to feel ashamed. I've been made to feel very guilty. I've been made to blame myself for complications with pregnancy, or loss, even though studies show that most miscarriages are caused by improper sperm, but that's a whole different topic. But we've been made to feel the blame and take the blame for all of it. And so when we can remove ourselves from those guilty or shameful feelings, we'll always feel guilt and shame. But I always say we don't have to let it drive our car. When we're able to navigate that, then I think our mouths will be open. And kudos to us for being bold enough to speak about these taboo topics that we've been told kind of not to say, or we've been trained. We haven't been told not to say them. We have been trained not to speak about them, but we're speaking about them, and we're gonna make sure that the next generation knows. I mean, because I'm landing this plane, but I'm thinking about how many women are talking about premenopause and perimenopause and menopause. And I always ask, why didn't you say anything? You went through the sweats, you went through the hormonal changes, you went through all this stuff. And you mean you didn't want to say anything, that this is what I have coming when I'm hitting 40 and 42 and 45? We have to start saying something. And that also helps with advocating. We've also been trained not to advocate. Just take it, just accept it. So it all kind of ties into each other. When we can navigate exactly what's going on, I think we'll be able to open our mouths a little better.
Absolutely. You shared a lot there. It made me think of like when I had my son, I had a cesarean. It wasn't planned. I was actually planning to have a home birth. Don't have time because we're ending very soon. But I was getting out of the car in the neighborhood I lived in, and I'm like getting help to get out of the car because I'm coming home from the hospital after having a cesarean. And this lady shouts at me, a Black woman, she shouts at me, "Oh, you took the easy way out," when she heard I had a cesarean. And I was just like, I remember feeling, it made me feel so ashamed. Ugh. So, Steph, you touched on something. We're going to bring it on home now. Giving the complexity of this topic. What does it take to heal? What does it take for us to trust our bodies? What does it take for us to trust ourselves? Now, we have just about 9 minutes left. So I'd like to I'm going to throw it back to you, Steph, real quick and brief so we can wrap it up.
Real quick and brief. And I know that this is 1, 2, 3 of many conversations, right? We're starting the conversations. I know there'll be more space to share. I really believe in us going back to our ancient ways, right? Of having community circles, of the ancient herbs that our ancestors used, of all that, the talks, the chats, the sharing, the drinking, the hot stuff, all those things that we have abandoned, not just due to modern medicine, just due to shame again. Maybe you go to a different country and that's not their custom to do that. So you want to assimilate, you want to get into maybe the American way or whatever way. We need to go back to what always worked for our ancestors in that way, where it was the village, it was the community. We were never meant to do it alone. And we have to begin to undo those things that say, you have to do this by yourself and you have to be the strong one. You have. We don't have to do any of it. And so briefly, it's just undoing to redo our true identity. We know that the women in the past did this and they got through it. Now we can add what we know now, but let's go back to that community, that village. It takes a community or village to raise a child. It also takes a village to raise an adult. The village doesn't stop when you grow up. So we need the villages to help mother the mothers. We must be mothered also.
Absolutely. Titi.
I want to wrap up by saying 3 things: grace, gratitude, and joy. So grace to the community that came before us, our ancestors, our parents, our aunties, and who may not that's just how they were socialized. That was just during their time and they just did not know or had the language like we have the language and the freedom in many ways to talk about these things. Just give that grace, give them grace to ourselves for the things that we got wrong, don't hold on to that and wishing that, you did something differently. You did the best that you could at that time, and not holding on to that. Gratitude for the strength that our ancestors gave us, gratitude for the knowledge that we have right now, gratitude that things have been, coming around. Quick sidebar, I gave for my last birth, my doctor was Black. And the person that gave me the epidural was a black man. I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. You know, that whole experience was so different. To see that many people, more Black people in healthcare, was just, it was a completely different experience. So, you know, gratitude to having more people who look like us, who understand our history, and who want to provide better care to us. In the medical field. And then joy, you know, I worked really hard to find joy in the storm. You know, like when I'm up feeding my second child through a G tube, I was grateful that she can eat. I was grateful that she survived. And I found joy in the small moments. Even in some days it was extremely hard, and someone gave me their joy. You know, they prayed over me, or they just sat there with me. They helped me with my kids, or they made me a meal. And then, you know, throughout that, you know, I had my last child, and I was like, I'm never having no kid again after that NICU thing. And I had the surprise of my third child, and what a beautiful experience it was to see profound joy with a pregnancy that went so well after such a traumatic experience. So I want to leave you all with that: grace, gratitude, and joy after trauma is still possible.
Thank you so much. Jessica.
Celebrate you. Celebrate the fact that you have joined the ranks of mamahood, that no matter what it looked like for you, that you made a decision and you did it. And just as simple as that, start there, because I think we have uncovered, right? There's a lot of unlearning as part of healing. There's a lot of resting that goes into healing, and not being so silent all the time, or thinking that you're supposed to be, or you should look this way, but just celebrate who you are and where you are. Start from that point right there.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And Dr. Joan, as I'm heading into asking you to share a little about that, Jessica mentioned celebrating you, that, you know, that you got to motherhood. Your journey was different. And I'd like for you to speak specifically to that, if you don't mind.
I remember bringing my daughter home. So, you know, met her on the day she was born at the hospital in Scarborough here in Brampton. And then she had to transition to kind of like a temporary stay space before coming home. I remember how difficult that was, because there was much disruption in terms of the actual flow of that. And then reaching out to people for the support, but then no one in my network had ever adopted before. So the understanding of that experience was absolutely missing for me. But having moved through it, the whole piece about gratitude, somebody is gifting you their child, and then you can then enter into a space now where you then are the caregiver and the caretaker of that child. So there's nothing but gratitude. I remember being in this space of joy as I experienced all of that as well. The question you asked at the beginning was about how do we heal? And I think one of the things that I am mindful of is that 500 years ago was when race was actually introduced to us as a human community. And so it's a falsehood that has been created. So when Titi says, I found a Black doctor, or I had a Black doctor taking care of me, I look at it as you had a human with a particular characteristic that was taking care of you. And so if we still get caught up in the whole race idea, something that's false anyways, versus looking at the substance of the human being who is in front of you, then we miss the mark. So I would want for every woman who is going to have a child, or who is going through a healing process, to have a human being that recognizes another human being is in front of them. And I am here to care for you in this particular way. And by George, I will do it with excellence. That is what all of us want when we interact with another. There is a physiology to trauma. And now that the polyvagal theory, which was developed about 30 years ago, is now fully entrenched in our society, we know that there's a process we must go through in order to heal from trauma. has nothing to do with our skin color, has nothing to do with our culture, has everything to do with how is your system regulated. And if it is dysregulated, how do you get it quickly into a space of regulation? This is what we do to heal. So I think, though, before we do all of that, as a community, we have to recognize how traumatized we are, how wounded we are in our many, many different spaces. But we also have to recognize that the human race is very much wounded, that a lot of the whiteness that we perceive as traumatization and racialization is actually them just dealing with some of their own traumas that they've had to deal with as well. So until we go back into that space of recognizing the human being in front of us, the trauma and the wounds continue. So we have to make that decision first, and then we can go further. I know you said this was to be short, but you did kind of get started.
And then you go and drop all of that, and I'm like, girl. Because what you said is extremely complex, because I think what I'm going to afford is that a lot of Black identified people who are identified as Black and identify as Black understand that more than the people that are looking to hurt them and harm them.
Agreed.
Like in that way, we don't necessarily need to hear that as much as they do.
The whole human race needs it, though.
And I'm so sorry to talk over you, and I've said too much, because we got to get to DeShantis, Huff, and take it on home. Thank you, DeShantis.
Yes, so I'm gonna say, I think the most important piece to healing is mothering yourself. Not just while we are either preparing for our birth or preparing to care for someone's child who's been gifted to us, but realizing the steps that we have to take for ourselves after we get those babies here safely. I'm sorry, I have a 1-year-old, but I know for me personally, I forgot how to take care of myself after getting over the humps of taking care of them, of having 2 children, getting used to having one and then bringing another one into the mix. Sometimes I hear a lot, once we hit that 2-year mark, then we're becoming ourselves again. But before we hit that 2-year mark, we have to take care of ourselves at the 1-month mark, the 2-month, and all the way there. I think oftentimes we, kind of like we were saying earlier, it's ingrained within us to take care of everyone else around us, but we have to heal ourselves first. And once we heal ourselves and get over those stigmas that have been placed upon us, we become even greater mothers than we could have realized to our children and to ourselves. And that to me is the most important thing, is to mute all of the noise that surround us, all of the negativity, and do what's best for us and what's best for our children.
Well said. Well, thank you so much to everyone today. This has been a very rich and rewarding discussion, and I'm thankful for what everyone has shared. There was so much authenticity here, and this is a very deep and heavy topic. There's a lot of grief. I mean, we're talking about race and loss and motherhood and these things, and how these things are intersected, and what we learned and what we have to unlearn. So thank you all for showing up today. I deeply appreciate you. And thanks to everyone who's watching for tuning in to Black Mental Health Matters. And we will see you next time. Thank you.